It's no coincidence that rainy days tend to be such a big cliché in horror movies. Rain is naturally spooky. It's something that leaves you unprotected, that can make you sick. Also, if there is thunder, a storm can kill you. I was never a person who liked the rain. But that day, I thought I was protected just by being inside a car. I couldn't be more wrong. That day, I didn't know that being inside a car on a freeway during a rainy day could be a trap. A trap in which I was not alone. That day, I had to go to my brother's house to take care of my nephew since the parents had suffered an automobile accident. My other brother and I covered for him to take care of the child. He was the caregiver that day, but he had a last-minute job and asked me if I could go. Normally, I would have told him I couldn't go since I had some work at home that I had to finish, but something was going on in my life too. During the last few days, I noticed I was being watched. A strange man, I guess an old man, was watching me through the window every night. The man was terrifying. He didn't look like a person. He was naked, his white skin with huge nose contrasting with his gigantic hump. Despite this, I could see him holding a stick in his hand to keep his balance. Despite the gloomy appearance, he was nothing more than an old man. I went out several times to see what he wanted, but every time I opened the door, he was gone. I tried to call the police or yell at him, but I never got anywhere. No one could find him, and he wouldn't answer me. I knew this man couldn't do anything to me, but still, I was a little scared. Maybe leaving my house for a few days would do me good, and surely the scary old man would find something else to do. The road was long and it was raining a lot. Even so, I decided to take the highway. I wanted to get there as fast as possible, and the other way would take much longer. I got in the car and was about to start it, but I remembered that I left the door of my house open. I got out of my car and ran to close it. If I had not realized that mistake, the old man might have entered my house. After closing the door of my house, I went back to the car and accelerated it on my way to the highway. The road was quiet. There weren't many people traveling, but I couldn't say that the highway was deserted. I drove around in the rain, cleaning the front windows, when I saw the weather forecast. I was expecting heavy rain, but this was basically a torrential downpour. I was quite worried about hail. Not only could that be potentially dangerous, but it would ruin my car for sure. Between my concern and my concentration on not hitting any cars, I was very inattentive to what was actually going on inside the car. I began to hear breathing behind me. I turned around quickly, thinking it was an act of my imagination. Unfortunately for me, it was not. In the back seat was a man sitting behind me. It was the old man, and he was staring at me with his dark, small eyes. Next to the old man, there was a huge sheet spread across the seat. That was the seat I used to cover my mess in the back seat. Had the old man covered up and hidden himself so I wouldn't see him? At what point did he get into my car? Was it when I went to close the door of my house? It didn't matter. It wasn't the time to look for explanations. I shouted everything to the old man. I asked him what he was doing there. I asked him what he wanted. And I yelled at him to get out of the car, although obviously he could not. He didn't give me any answer. He just kept looking at me with his terrifying white eyes. I looked back at the road for the first opportunity to get off the highway, but the old man had other plans. As I was about to turn, the man extended his baton and pressed it hard against my foot, which was on the accelerator pedal. The car started to go at an enormous speed, catching up with a few cars in front of me. I tried to pull my foot, but I couldn't. What was this enormous force in my foot? This old man was neither decrepit nor weak. He didn't seem to be exerting even the slightest force, but still, my foot was trapped. The man approached me and put his mouth on my neck, shooting some of his breath down my neck. I could feel his mouth open. I wanted to turn around to hit him, but I was paralyzed. That was not normal. I was not paralyzed with fear. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. Was he doing something so I couldn't turn around? What was that behind me? The car was going faster and faster, and the rain was pouring harder and harder, making the car more and more difficult to control. Inside my car, I felt the old man open his mouth wider and wider until suddenly something sharp pierced my neck. The old man was biting me. With a scream, I was able to control my body again, but I couldn't hit him, as I lost control of the car, which started to skid down the highway. The rain made it impossible for me to regain control of the car, and I ended up crashing into a beam. I woke up a few days later in the hospital. Miraculously, I hadn't hit any other cars, but I was seriously injured. Nothing was heard from the old man who was with me, as there was no one inside the car. The explanation that the man had entered while I was closing the door and had hidden in the sheets was no longer convincing. I didn't know why, but even if the car had been without anything to cover it, if I hadn't got out of the car to close the door of my house, I have a feeling the old man would have been there anyway. No one believed my story, but no one could explain the marks on my neck either. From that day on, I never drove on highways again, and I definitely became even more afraid of rainy days. I never saw that old man again, but not a day goes by that I don't think about him, wondering what he was, terrified that he will come back to finish what he started.
Back in the day when the laws of the forest weren't so strict, my friend and I would often go hunting. We weren't alone, of course. My friend had his dog Kiko, who would accompany us. He was a guard dog and was extremely good at tracking animals. My friend Nick and I were around 27, and we had all the gear needed for hunting. Nick was the more experienced one, since he had been hunting with his father and grandfather since he was 9. For me, it was a new experience altogether. So when we used to hunt, we made sure to go deep into the forest where there were more animals and better chances for us to find them. Our hunting expedition consisted of me, Nick, and Kiko mostly. Often Nick's dad used to join us too. We'd stay in there for around 2 days, sometimes 3 if we weren't able to get a good catch. By the time this incident happened, I was pretty skilled at hunting and in general survival in the forest. I could find a perfect campsite, build a tent, start a fire, shoot a hunting rifle, and most importantly, find food in the forest when the hunt was unsuccessful. Other than climbing a tree really quickly, you could say that I was a pro. So when we were 2 days into our hunting trip and Nick officially declared that we'd lost our way in the forest, I refused to believe him. Nick was the one who taught me how to hunt and all the skills needed for it, so I couldn't believe that he'd lost his way. Kiko was with us this time, and it was getting dark pretty quickly. We had hunted a medium-sized deer and were carrying it along with our backpacks. There were a few metallic rocks nearby, that's why our compass wasn't accurate. Plus, we had no maps along with us. In such situations, it's best to either set up camp for the night and navigate the way in the daylight, or try to find a stream of water and follow it until you reach someplace safe. Nick and I had hunted in those woods before, so we knew that a few miles away was a national highway. This wasn't a busy highway, but if we could make it to the highway, we could find a truck or a car to hitchhike in. I personally was tired of camping and couldn't do it for one more day. Our water supply was low and the mosquitoes were the worst. Plus, according to Nick, having a dead deer could attract unwanted predators. So that evening, we decided to walk in search of the highway. Also, we had to unfortunately leave our catch behind because it was too heavy to carry around. About an hour after the sunset, my cell phone got service and we used the GPS to find the shortest way towards the highway. We were pretty good hikers, so within the next 2 hours we had found the highway. But luck wasn't on our side that night. None of the vehicles stopped for us. And once they did, they either weren't going close to where we wanted to go, or they didn't want to give a ride to a dog. I think we should walk parallel to the road for a while and see if we can find a gas station or, better yet, a motel, Nick suggested. Well, it was the best plan, to be honest. So, despite being tired from walking all day, we kept going. About a mile later, we spotted a few woodcutters in the distance. There were at least 5 of them, and they hadn't spotted us yet, as we were walking very close to the forest line. The first thought after spotting those men was delight. However, Nick, who was walking a few steps ahead of me, and Kiko had other thoughts, as they had stopped dead in their tracks. "Hey bro, what's wrong? Why did you stop?" I asked Nick, to which he didn't reply. He held my hand and stopped me from walking further. He also signaled me to be quiet. So we just stood there observing the men. Now that I was seeing them for a long time, I noticed some odd behavior. Firstly, why were they cutting wood in the dead of night? Also, why were they cutting trees near the highway and not deep into the forest? In our days of hunting, we had come across a few woodcutters, and most of them were in the woods and with heavy machinery, and most importantly, they stopped working just before sunset. I don't think these are woodcutters. Nick was sharing my thoughts. What do you think they're doing then? Just then, the tree they were trying to cut fell, and suddenly, it was pretty clear what was going on. The tree did not fall in the forest. Rather, it fell right on the highway, blocking most of the road. It was pretty clear that no vehicle could cross the road. The tree was massive and cut strategically to block the road. Hey, Leo, we need to walk away from here, man, Nick told me. As we started tracking back our steps, we noticed a car coming from far. We both knew what they were walking into, so on instinct, we both jumped on the road and started waving our hands frantically. The driver must have spotted us as he slowed down the car, but no one got out. From our spot, we could see a man driving the car with a woman in the passenger seat and 2 kids sleeping in the back seat. Nick approached the driver. Hey man, sorry to stop you in the middle of nowhere, but please don't go ahead. Nick introduced himself and explained what we had seen earlier. However, the couple thought that we were lying and that we were the people they should be aware of, and drove away. We tried our best to convince them that they were making a bad decision, but the man started yelling at us and we had to give up. A few minutes later, a truck came the same way, and we stopped the truck and told the driver what we had seen. He was not only thankful, but willing to drop us off in a nearby town, and he didn't mind Kiko. The next day when I was watching the news, the reporter was reporting a piece of breaking news.
Murder at the National Highway or a normal accident? Last night around 11 p.m., a car was driving down the National Highway 7. It is suspected that there was a family in the car. The couple, Mark and Nancy Fern, were brutally murdered and their bodies were found in the front seats of the car. However, the authorities confirmed that there were 2 kids in the car as well, suggested by the 2 car seats found in the back seat of the car. The kids are declared missing, and there is a massive search going on for Boris and Anna Fern 4 and 6 respectively. All shreds of evidence found on the scene point towards this being a planned murder, but due to the lack of any witnesses, the detectives are finding it tough to take the investigation forward. Also, these are the photos of the missing children. If you spot them anywhere, please call this number, 315-555-1255.
I immediately called Nick. Hey, did you see the news? Yeah, I just did. I think we should call the cops. Later that morning, we called the cops and told them all that we knew. To date, that case remains unsolved, and the kids were never found. It's so unfortunate that the family didn't believe us and drove right into their doom.
Hi guys, my name is Aria, and to be honest, I don't know how I'm alive to tell you the story I'm about to tell you. It all started on March 25th. My boyfriend had his birthday in 2 days, and even though our relationship was really rocky, I was looking for something to give him as a present. To be honest, we both argued a lot, and this could be a great opportunity to fix things, so I had to give him a big gift. I searched high and low on the internet for someone selling his favorite Spider-Man action figure, until, with a lot of effort, I found someone who was selling it. This person was a childhood friend of mine, someone I knew who collected Marvel figures and sold as many as he could. I went into my friend's house and he quickly showed me the figure. It was beautiful. I'm sure Tom, my boyfriend, was going to love it. I stayed there having coffee with my friend and catching up with him, and after a few hours, I went back to my house. He couldn't have known where I was, or he would find out what I was going to give him. After that day, Tom spoke to me surprisingly less, but when his birthday came, He picked me up in his car to go to lunch with his family for his birthday. We hadn't dated in a long time, and his family lived far away, so this would be the first time I would meet her. You can imagine how nervous I was. What I imagined at the time was that I would never actually get to meet her because her family had died years ago. I still remember how that day, Tom had a smile from ear to ear. It was almost Machiavellian, but I could tell he was nervous and angry about something. I asked him what was wrong, but he just said he was nervous because he was going to meet his family, and I innocently believed him. As soon as I got into the car, I noticed that he didn't say a word to me or look at me. He was absorbed, and his head was somewhere else. Hey, tell me, what are you thinking about? Something is clearly happening.
I told you nothing. Can't you be a little more patient?
Then something is happening. If you tell me to be patient, it's because something is about to happen.
Just be patient, okay? I have a surprise for you.
A surprise for me? It's your birthday, not mine. From that moment on, Tom left me to answer. I was a little uncomfortable after that talk. I felt the surprise couldn't be good, but I decided to give him a chance. Anyway, it's not like he was planning to kill me or anything, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Tom's car started going faster and faster toward the highway. I knew his parents lived in that direction, so I didn't suspect anything strange. When we got on the freeway is when the weirdness really started to happen. Tom started to speed up more and more, until after a few minutes, he was over the limit. I started to get worried and let him know, but he just ignored me. After a few seconds that felt like hours, he began to answer me. Hey, seriously, what's wrong with you? You're going too fast. We might have an accident.
Aria, I know you met with a man a few days ago.
What? What are you talking about? Have you been following me?
So you recognize him? Well, it didn't make sense for you to lie either. Yes, I've been following you. If I'm suspicious of you, it's obvious I'm going to have to make sure you're not up to something weird. And I don't regret it. From what I saw, I was right.
What the hell is wrong with you? That was just a friend. I was buying your birthday present from him. Angrily, Tom put his hand on my neck and looked at me in a defiant manner.
Don't even think of using my birthday as an excuse. It's enough that you've already betrayed me.
But I'm telling you the truth.
Every word you say makes me sick. I'm more and more satisfied with my decision.
Decision? What are you talking about?
You should try to put on your seatbelt as I did, my dear.
Suddenly, Tom turned the car around and started driving down the freeway, on the wrong side of the road. All the cars barely managed to avoid him. Luckily, there were very few people, but still, it was only a matter of time before an accident happened, as Tom increased his speed more and more. Stop the car now! What the hell is wrong with you? Have you gone crazy? Tom didn't answer me, and just kept driving with a psycho face I have never seen since I've known him. I tried to put on my seatbelt before it flew out the window, but to my surprise it was gone. Someone had cut it off.
Oh, it looks like you don't have a seatbelt. A real shame. But you know what? You deserve it. Only good people like me deserve to live.
You're a psycho! Stop the car! You won't survive either. It's just a belt.
Well, we'll see about that. Unfortunately, I don't think you'll be alive to find out. If you're a kid with a car in front of you, you'll be thrown out of the window for sure. Your head will smash against the glass, and then you'll hit the other car and go straight into the pavement. I have my seatbelt and airbag to protect me.
Why are you doing this to me? I have never been with anyone else. I just wanted you to have a good time today.
Lies. All women are just as treacherous. You were only with me because you just met me. Surely you were already bored with me and you started dating your friend, right?
I swear, I didn't.
I hate liars.
Violently, Tom moved his car and crashed it into my side with another car. The glass in my window shattered and hurt my arm. Tom lost a little control but quickly regained it.
It hurts, doesn't it? You know what? This is love. This is the price of betrayal. I've been following you for as long as I've known you. I always knew you were up to something weird. But you know what? You're mine. And when a toy of mine is defective, I throw it away.
With that said, Tom accelerated to crash into a truck. This time, it was going to happen. The truck showed no signs of evading my boyfriend's car. I had to do something or I would surely die. In an act of impulsivity, I grabbed Tom's steering wheel and swerved the car to the side. We crashed into a fence and fell down a small ravine, straight into the river. Water began to pour into the car through my broken glass. Tom seemed to have passed out, so I took that moment to swim through the broken car window and escape. But suddenly, Tom grabbed my foot. His gaze was full of anger. This man wasn't interested in saving himself. He just wanted to kill me. As he grabbed my foot, I started to run out of air, and to make it worse, a part of my body was still going through the broken window of the car, and I still had the glass embedded in my skin. Every time my body hit the car, I could feel those little pieces of glass penetrate my skin even further. In my defense, I kicked Tom in the face as hard as I could, and on my third kick, he let go of me, and so I took the opportunity to swim away. As I did so, I could see Tom stretching his arms out to catch me, while the car was sinking deeper and deeper. Tom never made it out of the car. Ironically, it was the seatbelt that doomed him. But then again, he couldn't swim. Nearly drowning, I managed to get out and breathe, and when the police rescued me, I told them everything. There was no trial, and no one questioned what happened to me. It turns out that Tom wasn't really Tom. His name was Francis, and he was a wanted criminal for murdering his entire family. That's why he lived so far away from her. From that day on, I could never trust again. I know that many people are actually good, and not all of them will want to kill me, but I have to go through a very big healing process. Every time someone approaches me, I see Tom reflected in their eyes, and I feel that no matter how good the other person is, they are hiding a serial killer inside them.
My name is Oliver. I am a 26-year-old, and I'm on a road trip with my twin brothers Kevin and Mason, who will be graduating from high school this year. Our parents wanted me to take Kevin and Mason on college tours every break they got from school. We live in Ohio, but my mom wanted me to take the boys all the way to Cambridge, Massachusetts to tour Harvard University. She doesn't like the idea of her baby boys going so far away to college, but she loves the idea of her two sons becoming lawyers together. Kevin and Mason have their own ideas of what they want to do, but we're willing to tour Harvard for Mom's sake. It was late at night as we were driving through the state of Massachusetts. I had been driving for nearly 24 hours straight, and I was tired. I wanted to stay ahead of schedule so we could take our time. I had a hotel room booked and plugged the address into my GPS. "Are we there yet?" muttered Mason sleepily in the back seat. "I'm starving," Kevin groaned from the front seat. "On our way to the hotel now," I said. "Can we stop for food?" asked Kevin. "Yeah, I'll find someplace," I told them. I entered the route to the hotel and typed "food near me" on the GPS map. It led us down some highway called Route 44 in Rehoboth. The highway was dark and deserted, but this was the quickest route to a McDonald's, and I was starving too. Maybe some food would wake me up enough to get to the hotel. I continued down the long dark road, fighting sleep. I cracked open a window to let the cold autumn air in to keep myself alert. I had never fought sleep harder in my life, but I was determined to get my brothers some food. "Who's that?" Kevin asked. "Who?" I replied. "That dude out there." Kevin pointed down the road where we saw the silhouette of a man. As I drove closer, we saw a man with red hair and a full beard dressed in a flannel shirt and jeans. He looked dirty, as though he lived out in the woods surrounding the highway. "Think he needs help?" Mason asked. "Dude is creepy." "I say we keep driving," Kevin replied. "It's just creepy because it's late at night. Maybe he does need help," I said as I pulled up to the man. Kevin leaned over toward me as I rolled down his window. "Everything okay, sir?" I asked. The man just stared at us. His eyes were black, and he had an eerie grin stretched across his face. His teeth were yellow with black gunk in between them. I waited for him to speak up, but he said nothing. "Sir, is there something you need?" I asked. He reached up and placed his hand on the windowsill, and Kevin leaned further toward me. The man said nothing. He just continued to stare at us with that unnatural grin on his face. "Oliver, can we please go?" Kevin asked in a shaky voice. "This dude's creeping me out," Mason said from the back seat. "Listen, I would love to help if there's something you need, but if you don't tell me, I'm going to have to leave," I told the man. His eyes met mine, and I had a sense of dread come over me. I couldn't tell if I was hallucinating from being so tired, or if something was really wrong. He finally spoke. "I'm wanting to go get some food. Can you take me?" His voice was low, and something about it shot a chill down my spine. I looked back at Mason, who was shaking his head adamantly. Kevin shook his head too. If the man wanted to eat, we could take him. If traveling for my job on the road has taught me anything, it's keep a firearm with you. I happened to have one tucked under my seat. Not even Kevin or Mason knew about it. "Kevin, get in the back seat," I said. "Are you crazy? You're giving him a ride?" he protested. "According to the GPS, we're only 10 minutes away from the McDonald's. What's the harm in taking him for a bite to eat?" I said. Both boys protested, but Kevin crawled into the back next to Mason, and the stranger got into the front seat. I reached down, pretending to adjust my seat, but grabbed the gun I kept under it and placed it under my thigh. The stranger put his seatbelt on. "Thank you," he said with a smile that continued to send chills down my spine. "I know what you're thinking. I should have driven off. But sometimes people do crazy things when they're hungry, and that's what I told myself. Plus, I was prepared in case this dude tried anything smart." I kept my eyes on the road ahead and my leg pressed against the seat, holding my pistol there. The entire time I drove, the man just stared at us. His black eyes would go from me to the boys in the back and back to me. He then set his eyes on me, and I was so scared at this point that I finally pulled over and whipped out my gun, pointing it straight at him. He still continued to stare at me with those black, lifeless eyes. "I need you to get out of the car," I said as I took the safety off. Kevin and Mason gasped from the back seat. They seemed more shocked to see the gun than the stranger. In fact, he looked flat out amused. My hands shook as he grabbed my hand that held the gun. He unhinged his jaw wide and shoved the gun barrel in his mouth and pulled the trigger. We all screamed as brains and blood splattered everywhere. I sped down the road as fast as I could, all of us freaking out, when suddenly he vanished into thin air. None of us could explain what happened that night, but after we got to our hotel, we spent the night and drove home without looking back. I did some research when I got home and found out the man we came across was a ghost that many have seen before. He's known as the redhead in a flannel shirt ghost on Route 44 that smiles eerily at passing cars. I will never drive on Route 44 ever again.